Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive deep, literally, to uncover a hidden, high-stakes battle that's been raging for centuries. We're talking about the fight to keep our ships clean. And believe me, this isn't just about looks. It's the story of bottom paint, and it's an unseen war against the sea itself.
All right, so let's start by defining the enemy here. It's a thing called biofouling. It's this constant, relentless force of nature. The second you put anything in the water, the ocean just immediately starts to reclaim it, covering it with, well, everything from a thin layer of slime to a thick, gnarly crust of barnacles and other critters.
Now, you might be thinking, so what? A little slime, a few barnacles, who cares, right? Just scrape it off? But for any vessel, and I mean any, from a little sailboat to a massive cargo ship, this underwater invasion has absolutely huge real-world consequences. And the scale of this problem is just staggering. All that growth on a hull creates drag, which slows ships down and forces them to burn way more fuel. We're talking about a problem that costs the global shipping industry billions, with a B, every single year. And it's not just about efficiency. You've got organisms like shipworms that can literally eat away at a wooden hull, destroying it from the inside out. Plus, in our modern world, these fouled-up ships become unintentional taxis, carrying an invasive species to new parts of the globe and completely upending local ecosystems. So this has been a problem for as long as we've had boats. How in the world did our ancestors fight back in this underwater war? Well, the answer turned out to be a simple but frankly brilliant piece of chemistry. So the big idea figured out way back in the age of sail was that copper is toxic to marine life. Sailors literally started nailing thin sheets of it directly onto their ship's hulls. Then, around the 1860s, that idea evolved into the first paints that actually had copper compounds mixed right in. And what's really wild is that after let's call it a detour through some even more powerful and dangerous chemicals in the 20th century, we've come full circle. Copper is still the industry standard today. So how did we get from hammering metal sheets onto a hull to the high-tech coatings we use now? Well, it's not just about having a layer of poison anymore. It's about how you deliver that poison in a really sophisticated way. Okay, so modern paints basically have two main tricks up their sleeve. First, you've got hard paints. Think of these like a hard sponge. The paint itself is a tough film filled with tiny pores that hold the poison, or biocide, and it leaches out slowly over time. Then you have ablative paints, which are completely different. They're designed to wear away slowly, kind of like a bar of soap in the shower. As the boat moves through the water, the outer layer erodes, constantly revealing a fresh, potent surface underneath. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the type of paint you choose depends entirely on how you use your boat. If you're out on the water all the time, an ablative paint that constantly refreshes itself might be perfect. But if you've got a high-speed power boat, you need a durable, hard paint that can take a beating. And then you've got hybrids trying to give you the best of both worlds, and even these super slick silicone coatings that aren't poisonous at all, they're just too slippery for anything to even get a grip. Okay, so we've got this clever solution, problem solved, right? Well, not exactly, because here comes the big dramatic twist in our story. The very thing that makes this paint so effective, its toxicity, is also a massive environmental problem. And this problem really hit its peak in the 60s and 70s with a biocide called tributyltin, or TBT. I mean, this stuff was incredibly good at killing marine growth, but it was also devastatingly good at killing pretty much everything else. It caused horrible mutations in oysters and led to the collapse of entire shellfish industries. It was so bad, it was eventually banned across the globe. So with TBT off the table, the industry went right back to using good old copper. But pretty soon, scientists started realizing that, hey, while it's not as catastrophic as TBT, copper's still a pollutant. And in busy harbors and marinas where you have hundreds of boats all just sitting there, slowly shedding copper into the water, the concentrations can build up to levels that are really toxic for the local sea life. This led to a really crucial question. Are we just using way too much of this stuff? A key piece of research from Chalmers University in Sweden decided to figure out, what's the minimum effective dose? How much copper do we actually need to get the job done? And what they found was honestly pretty shocking. They discovered that many of the most popular paints on the market were leaching 4 to 6 times more copper into the water than was actually necessary to stop the barnacles. The products dumping the most poison weren't any more effective than the ones with much lower, more targeted doses. We were basically overdosing the ocean for no good reason. So you can see how, for a modern boat owner, choosing a paint isn't just about performance anymore. It's become this really complex balancing act between effectiveness, how much it costs, and now your environmental responsibility. And a huge part of that decision is just where you are in the world. I mean, think about it. Fighting off super aggressive barnacles in the warm tropical waters of the Caribbean is a totally different ballgame than trying to prevent slime from growing on your hull in a cold freshwater lake, which might have its own special pests like zebra mussels. Every environment needs a different weapon. And of course, this environmental impact hasn't gone unnoticed. Governments are finally starting to step in. Places like Washington State and California are leading the charge, putting in new rules to phase out or strictly limit copper paints on recreational boats. This is forcing everyone, boaters and manufacturers, to start seriously looking for alternatives.
So where does this all lead us? Where does this endless battle between our ships and the sea go next? Well, the future seems to be all about finding smarter solutions, not just stronger poisons.
Researchers are developing a whole new arsenal of weapons. We're talking about new, less toxic biocides that are better targeted, and all those biocide-free coatings, like the silicone paints that rely on physics instead of chemistry. There's even this wild, futuristic idea called the slime concept, where a ship would generate its own constantly shedding slime layer, kind of mimicking how fish stay clean. How cool is that? And that really brings us to the final critical question that we're still trying to answer. For as long as we have put boats in the water, we have fought this war against biofouling. But the challenge now is to figure out how to win that war in a way that protects not only our shits, but the very oceans we depend on. And the search for that answer, well, it continues.